Boo. Good evening. Good evening, good evening. Well, lots going on, as usual. It seems to be rising from the cauldron, another bug. Interesting, to say the least. So that's on the cards. You've got the war show going insane with bullshit everywhere, while NATO loads up a new frontier in the Ukraine with a shed load of military. So they're worried that, the Third World War is going to blah, blah, blah. Well, the Third World War's been. It was the Quiet War, and it was actually being celebrated in 1979 as the 25th anniversary. So that's an interesting data that people forget. The Third World War's been. It was the Quiet War. I think the diversion they've got going over in the Ukraine is obviously everybody shit themselves. I think it is going to happen and go live. But in fact, what they're aiming to do is shut down all the nations under martial law. Because when you get into the Quiet War documents, they're speaking of attacking the populations within their own boundaries with the technology that they've been putting up all around us. So that's rather interesting data that we need to keep in mind. The Third World War has been, whatever this is, would be more in line with leading us to this global social catastrophe, the like of which has never been seen. So we do need to keep this in mind, it's not to say that they've not got a theatre of war going on, they do. But it's nothing like what's being promoted on the Western media, from which all these sanctions against Russia are actually, they're not hurting Russia at all, but they've shut all the Western nations down, especially in Europe, with the energy costs, which have gone through the roof. Food's gone up, everything's going up. We're looking at here, and what this is all about is getting to that social catastrophe that they speak of in the Third World War strategy, which does come after the proposed Third World War. So who knows? We do have to keep that in mind, though, of course. Good evening, everybody. Paul, P. White, Debbie Bernard, hello. Oak Tree, hello. Winston Smith, good evening. Mew Pit, hello. Sean Folks, Paul Sefton, hello. Michael Gregory, hello. Jace Ventura, good morning. Oh, you're over there in the Oz. Yep. Interestingly, over there, I don't know what you think of this, but it's been suggested to me that Bossy might not be of the Prussian ilk. So I don't know what you make of that, Jace, but that needs to be investigated further, I do believe. China just delivered 6 large military plane loads of air defense systems to Serbia. To Serbia? Well, that's interesting because the Serbians don't like NATO after what they did in the 90s. So, very interesting. Some spread lies, others know the truth. Even in all, some spread lies, others know the truth. But, Jace, go on. Okay, so, What else is going on in the big wide world? So I picked up a report that's suggesting. So we're looking at this schismogenesis being operational. So you've got Putin allegedly having rang Trump and said, "We've just released or found 35,000 children in the child trafficking network bases across the Ukraine." So of course that fits perfectly with the Trumpets brigade because they're already onto that, aren't they? These missing children, which makes me look and think. So Trump's Cyrus, the emancipator of the then captive Judeans, or those from the house of Judah, mixed in with the Benjamins and the Levites, hate the Scythians, because of course the Queen Tomala, I can't remember her name, kicked his head in and cut his head off and said, "There you go, we beat you up." So they hate the white race in that respect already. You've got Trump and Putin sort of allying, and that'll pull in the Trumpets because, of course, they're both now hunting down these child networks. So the schismogenesis on that side of things has expanded the Trumpets' belief that they're on the right track. It's pulling King Cyrus and Trump together, which again, you're looking at Abad Lubavitch connection there. So that's interesting. Then you've got all the lefties, the nut jobs, the Bolsheviks, and all that kind of stuff. Moving, it would appear, into this old Khazaria to retake it and call it it's Israel Part 2. Now, on that note, we have a rebuttal to that heavenly Jerusalem idea. Bear in mind that this rebuttal was created in 2019. So we're a few years off from actually invading as they have, and you can clearly see where Putin's moving his forces. He is actually moving to take over the southeastern and eastern part of the Ukraine. So it does work. It's furthered the idea that it is going on in the actions that they've taken in this since February. However, the rebuttal was put forward in 2019, and what we do get is a bit more insight into who this Igor Birkin fella is that's actually promoting this heavenly Jerusalem. But we also have to bear in mind that it's been suggested that although there's a news blackout on this across the world, there are murmurs of it in Ukraine itself, but more importantly, that it is quite well known and pushed out on media in Israel. So we do have to be careful with this because, of course, deception is the name of the game of this Khazarian priesthood. So now this is put up, as I said, 1st of March 2019, and the author calls himself the Commissioner of Qatar. Well, Qatar is a very interesting place. I've done a couple of reports on Idlib and Qatar's involvement, which was run by a ex-British military intelligence guy doing all sorts of naughty things. Now, I say ex, that's how it's presented, but of course, once you're in intelligence, do you ever cease being intelligence? So one has to keep that in mind as well. So it says, about fake, the Heaven Jerusalem project. It says, question to Qatar. Today there is a lot of information about a certain Igor Gecko and his sexy assistant, Sarah. So he's straight away giving us the real name of this Igor Belkin, as was presented in the last week's bit. And he's giving him the name Igor Gecko. And his sexy assistant, Sarah, who were making numerous videos promoting plans to create a heavenly Jerusalem in the 5 southern regions of Ukraine. You also refer to the words of Igor Gecko, who recently became Harry Burkott now. They were saying Igor and the other one. What kind of people are talking on behalf of all Jews and even showing how they will bomb unwanted countries from a new, as yet uncreated Israel. Let's start with the sexy Sarah. According to Jewish tradition, she is not Jewish and cannot even be considered as such. The reason is simple, and you will understand it. Do not cut on your body, and do not write on yourself. And that is quoted in Leviticus 19:2-8. It says a similar text exists in the Torah, since the Old Testament is the 5 books of Moses. Look at Sarah, and you will see that the lady has been chipped in all available places, and even the Star of David has been poked out on the front of her left thigh, which is reason for Orthodox Jews to stone her. God, are they still thinking like that? That is violating the Torah. She became an outcast among Jewish women. In my opinion, this woman is nothing but an ordinary type of well-staged performance and clearly does not shine with her mind. However, it is quite possible that this is the idea of the authors of this commercial project. In any case, she cannot be perceived as a Jew. Who she thinks she is her business. Now, about Berkut, what only plans to create Jewish statehood was not. What only did not offer the Jews in full seriousness. I think we've got, because it's obviously not English. Uganda, northwestern Australia, the Jewish autonomous region with its capital in Bidzhan, even Greenland, at one time for the idea of Jewish autonomy in the Crimea. The entire Jewish elite of the USSR was shot. It's not well put together, that, actually. And here is a chic offer that is difficult to refuse. To occupy the entire south of Ukraine by Jews, it was made by the leader of the party, Great Ukraine, Igor Berkut, who clearly does not speak Ukrainian, but knows something about Israeli realities, albeit very superficially. And his part in Ukraine is inconspicuous and unremarkable. And now with the receipt of Israeli citizenship of Gecko and will completely collapse. So he's saying basically his party is going to collapse. So this is 2019, remember. So things have moved on a little bit since then. According to information about him, which he himself distributes, it is known that the epic event of the beginning of 2017, which the world Hang on a minute. According to information about him, which he himself distributes, it is known that the epic event of the beginning of 2017, which the world media which casually did not mention, was the landing in the port of Odessa of the first group of immigrants from Israel, headed by Igor Berkut. This group of 183 pioneer Jews arrived in Ukraine from Haifa to lay the first stone in the foundation of heavenly Jerusalem on the fertile land of southern Ukraine. It would seem that it is time for the whole world to pay attention to such a project, because it is led by none other than the forerunner of Moshiach himself. Okay, yeah, so he's putting himself up as sort of the forerunner for the long-awaited Moshiach, which is supposedly supposed to be Jesus, but obviously it's nothing of this kind, because the same people that are distributing that idea. And it's also said that Judaism, the press claims that Berkut is none other than the Mashiach ben Yosef, or the preliminary Messiah, followed by Mashiach ben David, or the heavenly Messiah. Well, I really hope it's not David Rothschild. That would not be funny. Let me remind you that David is one of the names of Christ, which I told you in the miniature memoirs of Christ were to read, and also said that Judaism stems from their Christianity and is based on the legends of the eternal Gid. I'm not sure I'm following that bit. What are the couple in front of us on the TV channel? Igor Berkut is very serious, introducing sexy assistant Sarah, who periodically appears in the frame. He notifies that she is part of a joint project to create a heavenly Jerusalem in the Ukraine. That is, Sarah at least should have some function and semantic load, except for give and bring. Carry such near-scientific nonsense with a serious face as Berkut can only a good actor or a well-prepared provocateur. So he's sort of claiming that this guy's very well trained. However, the misfortune of all the crooks is that there is an old belief in the world that clearly understands how it really was. And it is precisely because of such burkuts that we are mentors of the old believers. We do not tell all the secrets of the past so as not to give such people the strongest weapon, which is information. Now you and I will solve Sarah's mystery. It's a bit disjointed, I have to say. And for this, you will have to look again into Jewish Torah, Nevim Ktuvim. And the secret of the Jews is such that a woman, if you saw, points to Messiah ben David, for a woman hints at royalty. And the divine soul of Ben David soars into a woman and bears a son. And that's been taken from Vayikra 12:2. And points to the son of Joseph. That is, according to the idea of heavenly Jerusalem, this sexapal Sarah should give birth to a child son from the Chola of Gecko, who will become the embodiment of the Moshiach on earth. All right. Before us, another white brotherhood is unwinding, the purpose of which is to cut down more money. And if it turns out, then hang another legend about their exclusivity with gullible cronies. They will be born on the land. See what is being done in Uman for the Jewish New Year, celebrated by the Hasidim. And that is just the grave of the rabbi and nothing more. And what will happen if Sarah born a baby in Neprovosk, the New Jerusalem? Yes, they will cut themselves under the root, especially if they give a gorilla money for this. If all this takes shape and there are followers of this idea, Gecko will have no shortage of money and adherence to his new party. Money is given for such projects because this is the reformatting of Ukraine in general into a state that will get out of control of Russia and even Europe. Interesting. So the plan, according to this, is that even Russia won't have any say in this. So is Russia just, if it's the case that it's real, is Russia just moving the boundaries, so to speak? And then with NATO doing what they're doing, you'd actually have NATO guarding one boundary and Russia guarding the other. So that would be quite clever. I don't know whether that's the case. However, Zelensky has in the last week been making statements claiming that the new Ukraine under his watch will be very like Israel. So, and cited on that would be checkpoints, etc., etc. So, you know, there's a clear connection here with whatever is actually going on in the Ukraine. You do have the Nazi connections to it. I'm not so sure that this idea of this heavenly Jerusalem is just a fable. It could very well be true, especially because it'd be going back to their homeland, as it were. Because Genghis Khan kicked them all out. That's what Genghis Khan were doing. He ensured that none of these Khazars could exist in that landmass to the east of Russia, and of course that pushed them all into Europe on into America. So that's what's pretty much been going on. Of course, for Zelensky to be speaking and paralleling his new Ukraine with Israel, he's obviously after the dosh. He's after the money. So that has to be taken on board as well. I think this is an American-Israeli project that has every opportunity to come true. Well, the local Aborigines will be presented with so much evidence of sanctity that the Cochley, completely distraught by the number of the churches, will trample the priests of all faiths along with their demands in the direction of the specified cut. Well, here's a version from Gecko and Sarah. I predict a severe blow to Orthodox in Ukraine and the problems of other faiths. Of course, I outlined all this schematically. Be careful watching Berkut. I understand that this person will go to great lengths for the sake of power and money. After all, I'm a psychology professor, which means I know something. By the way, a serious psychologist participates in the production of this show, which can be seen from a number of techniques used in the broadcast of the programs. Dawn. So these this bunch of programs are labeled "don't." However, the topic is so dangerous that everything is done on the verge of trolling, so that there is always an opportunity to write everything off as a joke. Well, yeah, I can understand. That is a method that people do when they're telegraphing something that they intend to do. They're looking for acquiescence by silence, by nobody stepping up and saying, "Well, what the hell's going on here?" And in order to detract that, you would then obviously set it up so it could look like it's a complete joke. So you don't take it serious. However, through the laws of the spiritual laws, the fact that they've telegraphed what they're going to do, their intention, albeit, a bit mystic, still carries that they told you and nobody rebutted it. So that would, again, just the fact that that's actually being described as can be seen would again be a bit of a red flag as to the fact this could very well be a real project. And of course, what are we looking at? We're looking at this beast system, of course, and it's got 10 horns. And of course, when it's describing, when you go into that, it's actually describing empires and kings, and this is what it's doing. It pulled together the system itself, and that if they would have centered this in Ukraine, and then be given weapons that they can hit anybody with, China would have to then be the oversoul to the New World Order, and we can see what they're doing there now with this new outbreak. We really have to keep an eye on that, because this is what they're trying to thrust upon everybody. And that comes on the back of this proposed global social catastrophe, the likes of which have never been seen or witnessed before. So when you start pulling all these sort of bits in together, it does look like, you can start to see a bit of what the picture really is. And a big misnomer of it is getting everybody to believe that we're on the verge of the Third World War. Well, that's been the Quiet War. We can have a look at that when we've had a look at this to get an idea of what we're being written down in 1979 as they celebrated 25 years into the Third World War. Where are we? Okay, it's the leaders of many sects, including the White Brotherhood, had to serve time for their activities. The couple looked smarter and competently exploits the idea of Ukrainians and Jews as one people. However, I repeat once again that Gecko himself and his Surrey used the services of a good master of psychology. But what this couple knows very well is the words of Trotsky Bronstein, in which their entire project is based. Only unlimited credulity and compliance, as well as the lack of consciousness of the need for a constant strong adhesion of all members of the state, not only for the duration of the war, every time destroyed all the conquests of the Ukrainians. Therefore, they lost their independence earlier and live now under Lithuania, then under Poland, then under Austria and Russia, constituting a very valuable part of these powers. These everyday features of the character of Ukrainians must be remembered by every agitator, and his success will be ensured. Lee Trotsky, Introduction to Communist Agitation in Ukraine, the speech of Comrade Trotsky's People Commissioner to the Kutskists. So he's quoting a speech there. What were I going to say then? That's right. After the First World War, the Ukraine was actually 4 states. And as he just said there, you've got Poland, Lithuania, and Austria and Russia, each having a sort of enclosed principality, if you will, in the Ukraine. And so you've got it's like a big Prussian mix, isn't it? But who are these Prussians? Well, indeed. So is the New Jerusalem possible in Ukraine? Recently, the internet has become a popular topic with the creation in Ukraine of the so-called New Jerusalem. Iger Burkett tells a lot about this. Allegedly, in the southern regions of the country, it is planned to create a settlement of rich Jews who are attracted by our mild climate and fertile lands. They are ready to move here from overpopulated Israel, invest in the development of the economy of these areas and provide Ukrainians with jobs. So if they've actually done in Israel what they're saying they've done in relation to the shop, then a bit like what they did in Europe under Hitler, which was to force people to move from where they settled because they weren't doing it. It'd be a great convalescent place if you wanted to pull people in there and go, oh, you need to convalesce now after you've been annihilated on your own fruition. So anyway, that's me just rabbiting on. Where are we? Yeah, investing. So they're ready to move in from unpopular Israel, invest in the development of the economy of these areas and provide Ukrainians with jobs. Burkett says that the first batch of immigrants has already landed this year in Odessa, and many of my acquaintances think that it would be good if such a project was implemented. We cannot restore order in our country, and the Jews will also benefit, and so would we. Do you think this is a real possibility? Tamara Petrenko. It is difficult to understand this issue and unambiguous answers to numerous questions are hardly possible. There's a lot of information, but reliability is in question. About the possible resettlement of Jews in Ukraine, said the Russian scientist Sergei Sal, a candidate of physical and mathematical sciences, associate professor who makes reports on recent discoveries in the field of archaeology, history, linguistics, physics, and other sciences. But Sergei Albertovich does not mean immigrants from Israel, but latent representatives of Jewish nationality, intellectuals from Russia and Ukraine, which are allegedly planned to be collected in 5 southern regions of Ukraine: Odessa, Nikolaev, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Dnipropetrovsk. And I've probably said them completely wrong. The oligarchs will constitute the cultural and financial elite of the new structure, or country, it says in brackets. Such theories are voiced by former intelligence officer, veteran of the war in Afghanistan, leader of the Ukrainian party, the Great Ukraine, Igor Burkett. So Igor Burkett's a former intelligence officer, a veteran of war in Afghanistan, and he's the leader of the Ukrainian party, called the Great Ukraine. And this is Igor Burkett, or who's really a gecko. And his real name, Gecko, he says there. With this project, Heavenly Jerusalem, sometimes you can find the name New Jerusalem. The website Odessa Politician published an interview with him in which he, in particular, said the population of Ukraine should not exceed 5 million, who will speak Hebrew, and they'll speak Hebrew. So 5 million, they're going to speak Hebrew. And what's just happening now since Russia went in there, he's got absolutely shed loads of refugees. Interesting. So on one hand, this getting rid, opening up for bringing in. So, interesting. Even though this is a rebuttal, but of course this was done in 2019. The rest are recycled. Well, this is pretty much how Israel works in that sense. If you look at its constitution, it's absolutely outrageous. Today, the Ukraine belongs to a narrow circle of people, billionaires and multimillionaires, who are either in power or control it. Who is living badly today? Those who could not fit into the service of the state, a bit like it's getting here. And everywhere else, you know, the only employment is getting to the point now where it's to be in service to the state. They can only complain about their worthless lives because the owners of our country are not obliged to take care of 14 million pensioners. Well, we know how they're getting rid of them. Children and disabled people. So they don't want to be looking after children or disabled people. Well, they're doing the same with the disabled people, aren't they? Do not resuscitate and such. And then I have seen stuff where they're trying to also allow that on youngsters. So even if this is a fantasy, there's a hell of a lot of it that's actually going on, and not just in this particular place. In order for the existing system to come into balance, 45 million people are super sufficient in Ukraine. All excess must be disposed of, and that any poor teachers and doctors who constantly want to eat did not. It is necessary to oust them beyond the boundaries of society and to make sure that they do not live to retirement. Seriously? That's killing the creditor. Yeah. So that's if they ever wanted to see an active principle of killing the creditor, it's coming out of this new idea. Burkett says that at the beginning of this year in the port of Odessa landed the first group of immigrants from Israel, 183 people from Haifa, to the fertile land of southern Ukraine to lay the first stone in the foundation of heavenly Jerusalem, which by 2027 should be for Jews a centre of prosperity built on new technologies. Some call Iger Burkett himself the executive director of the project to create the main centre of world Jewry in the territory of 5 southern Ukrainian regions. Now, technology. We do know that most of it's actually gone to Israel over these last, especially 10 years, to the point that the processor that's in most computers now actually has a processor in the processor which is accessible only by the same. We are aware of many, many labs that are being found all over Ukraine. Now, it's a bit, is it, aren't they, as to what they're actually doing. It's pretty clear the biological chemical labs. There are now links being shown to what's just been over the last 2 years. And then there's also murmurs that they've been doing experiments with breeding of humans and animals. So we're getting back into pre-flood times. We're getting back into minotaurs and all these so-called mythological creatures. So technologies, they've been funding all that for quite a long time via US and probably this bunch of tosspots in Parliament today, the parliamentarians, because it really needs to be understood by all. You need to stop seeing left and right. It's Boris or it's others. Parliamentarians together and the Lords are pushing this stuff as a body together. And if you're tittle-tattling over individuals as though and they're separate, so they've got their own character and they're good and they're part of this party and not that party, you're really, really missing the point. Because that's primary school politics. And it works when they espouse it on the TV because the population are at that level themselves, which is why it makes sense to them, I've been asked to stand in these elections for an independent party, reform, I think they call it. But in all truth, it's like asking me to go back to primary school because I'd find it very difficult. Because if I had to join that, immediately my instinct would to become head teacher, the headmaster, and pull them all into line. Because that's what they're like. They are primary school children. And they need bringing to book, and only the headmaster can do that. So I don't think I'd last very long in the sense that I'd be basically putting them in detention, giving them lines and caning them, every day. So it's probably not wise that I enter that arena, I have to say. So some call Iger Burkett himself the executive director of the project to create the main centre of world Jewry in the territory of 5 southern Ukrainian regions. According to him, the first 100,000 Israelis will come and settle on the territory of New Jerusalem, Odessa, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporozhye, Kherson, and Nikolaev, like that. Regions until the middle of 2018. So they've been going in. It says 100,000. Well, has that happened? Have you heard anything about it on the official news? In total, by the end of 2022. Oh no, that number. Now you know there's something going on because the number's out. So in total, by the end of 2022, which is possible because look at what they're doing, 6 million Jews from Israel and more than 12 million from Russia, the United States and the European Union. So that's 12 million from Russia. That's Bolsheviks. Ooh, this is going to become a Bolshevik hub, is this? So this is going to be a premier place of Lucifer. So 12 million from Russia, the United States and the European Union. How interesting. So they're going to, well, they would do, wouldn't they? They've now set this Zionist versus Islam up all across Europe, in Britain, not so much in America, although who knows what the South Americans are actually, what's their program, because we speak little about the South Americans, but they've been completely under the control of this Prussian Jesuit since the late 1700s. We don't hear much about what their role is. However, I did once catch a diary of a torture. You can't get these things online anymore. They've probably been shifted into what we call the dark web. But back in the day, you could pretty much access anything. And this was basically a diary put together by a guy on a military torture shindig. So he'd be going to teach. So anyway, and he's going through his day-to-day, blah, blah, blah. And they're getting techniques, etc., and they're using dolls, etc. And then interestingly, he comes up one day and he says, "Today we get live ones," and it was like, whoa. So you're quite into this thing, thinking, Jesus, man, is this? But then you think, well, that's how they'd have to teach it. And then it starts to get interesting because obviously not everybody can start applying what they thought they could do or what they could do on dolls onto live people. So first, obviously, it's grown-ups. And then as he moves forward, describing all these things, and obviously there's people that are enjoying it much more than others, people that are falling by the wayside and knocking off. And then it comes the line, is today's children. And apparently from this diary, that's where most of them fell short and couldn't do it. But he made a point of note in saying that what he found interesting is that those that were left for the real serious dark stuff were all from South America, Chile, Argentina, etc. And interesting, from 79 to 85, I think, Argentina and Chile on Antarctica started to a race between each other as to who could get pregnant on Antarctica. Now, it might sound nothing and odd and just irrelevant, but what you glean from looking at this information is rather interesting, because there have been rules set on Antarctica for a long, long time, from all the time that all these nations have been on there. They're very strict, and that nobody is allowed to go to the Antarctica pregnant. And lots of rules are in place in order that no shenanigans can go on down there between male and females, so that somebody does get pregnant. Now, why would that be? One would ask. Well, it's clear. The reason they've done that is because they cannot allow for Antarctica to have any indigenous humans, because then they claim ownership of the territory, the land. Okay? Yeah, it's very important. So again, the importance of this being on the land, man, and being person on the sea, it's so real as the system that's running the world, and opposing the system on the earth, the earth, the nature, the God of nature, the earth that created the earth. Then you've got all these other gods risking you off into the world. Okay, so that's the reason why these rules have been set and enforced on Antarctica, so there can be no indigenous population. Hey, so now I've only just got into this stuff, but it's going to bear more fruit. So I'll let you know as we go, but that's worth keeping in mind as well, because we do know that Antarctica is where all the elites of all the nations are. So we can look at this potentially, this New Heavenly Jerusalem, as potentially just another script to fix the hapless dead into the religious conundrum that's been created through futurism for the clash, while the real leaders or the rulers and their officiates are all on Antarctica. Because everything's being set up for annihilation down here, isn't it? Let's be honest, starvation, that's going to create violence and anger, etc., etc. I mean, if you've ever studied what happens when a nation starts to starve, then I don't need to go through it. You know exactly what kind of actions and behaviors are going to be brought to the fore. And, most people do tend to take part in it. So anyway, that were a waffle. Let's get back to this. Where were we? So According to the organisers, residents of any non-Jewish nationality living in the territory of New Jerusalem will be invited to take appropriate exams to obtain a certificate officially confirming that this person is not anti-Semitic. God, it's just so ludicrous. I mean, it's Semitism is a group of languages, and that's what describes the language. It's nothing to do so much with race. But to this priesthood, it is all about race, and it's about specifically Khazarian race. And they're big on talking equality and that they're in a democracy, but no, if England decided to put this a test to obtain that you're not anti-English into practice, the entire left would erupt into insanity and would all be identifying as fruit bats, because they wouldn't know how to deal with that. I mean, they trigger, they'd be like, wah. But no, this can be put out everywhere as okay, and nobody bats an eyelid in the world of the dead. Okay, now. So anyway, stop waffling, Shawnee boy. Where's that? Right, it says this document will give the right to work in the state bodies of the new Jewish state. The rest of the Aborigines. Oh, Aborigine. Now, Abo is a bad word. It removes original. Yeah, so the AB is a cancel. It sort of cancels out the fact that the originals. So they're even using the word wizardry here in this already. Living there will be so the rest of the Aborigines living there will be given cash allowance so that they can survive without problems and do not engage in crime. The official capital will be Dneprovetsk, and the cultural capital will be Odessa. So the priesthood will be in Odessa. Listening to the monologue of Iger Burkett, you can come to the conclusion. So that's all what we've just discussed there was what Iger Burkett is stating is going to be in relation to this new thing. It says, listening to the monologue of Iger Burkett, you can come to the conclusion that it is utter nonsense, sometimes similar to the partial truth. It's quite possible that he voiced real plans and real goals of those who have been reducing the population of Ukraine by fire and sword for the past 25 years. But if this is nonsense, what's the point of carrying it? At the same time, representatives of more than 130 nationalities and live on the territory of Ukraine. So there's 130 nationalities living currently in the Ukraine. Are many willing to accept this claim? Well, they wouldn't accept it, would they? Why they'd have to do something extremely drastic vis-a-vis February and Vlad the Impaler on the march. How many of them are ready to start studying the basics of Judaism and take the appropriate exams to get a certificate, giving the right to work in their native Ukraine? Do many Orthodox people, or Muslims, or Catholics, or Protestants want their children to join a youth organization similar to the Soviet Komsomol? So this has already been in. So it's just a shift to Sovietism. It's Bolshevism shifted into China. The dragon is now giving this system its power, and the system itself controls US, EU, UK, British Empire, Russia, Scandinavian countries, everywhere, Islam. It controls the lot. The idea of creating New Jerusalem is also exposed by the Ukrainian writer and public figure Eduard Kordos of the Christian Liberation Voluntary United Union, who gained fame thanks to his works with attacks on the Lubavitcher Hasid court of Chabad. So Edward Kudos is another guy, a publicist who's been exposed by this guy, and he's in full attack of the Hasidic court of Chabad Lubavitch. And I know this may, to a lot of people, it may be a new term, but it's based around this prophecies of this guy, the Rebbe. But when you look at that guy himself, everybody and anybody that you've ever seen and known in power that would be Khazarian whether that's Goldman Sachs or whatever, right down to Kushner. I think Trump's visited him as well. They all visited the Rebbe, who's no longer with us, but this is the result of it, and it's tied to sabotage Evit and the doing of sin to bring in this Moshiach. The commander of the battalion Cascade, a former intelligence officer of the KGB of the USSR, military expert Colonel Sergei Ruzomovsky, considers the idea of heavenly Jerusalem a grandiose information fake, of which there are many in the world. Global fakes are launched in order to see at what level the mass consciousness is, and to benefit from that. Why is such a project impossible in principle? No one has ever solved the Jewish question in history. And you won't. Reasoning about the fertile climate of the Black Sea, about the black soils, is also an invention. This is a risky zone, which in ancient times was called the wild field, and was disastrous for humans. It was impossible to survive in it. There is no fresh water between the rivers. Land cultivated is impossible because of weeds. There are only nomads. Well, that's a bit nonsense. Weeds just get pulled. There are only nomads and hordes who were engaged in slave trade and robbery, plus a locust invasion every 3 years. Agriculture became possible there only with the advent of large-scale land reclamation. So now it is possible. What's he saying? Collective farms and chemical tillage. All this was done during the Soviet era. Today, everything is destroyed. Farmers are ruined. This is not a happy place. No, but the work's been done. I don't think this guy, he's upping himself, actually. Farmers are ruined. This is not a happy place. In Israel, there are 6 harvests a year. There is a different climate. It's possible to gather the elite, but not to make it work. Who will work? The slaves who live there? You can't stay on bayonets for long. There is no minerals there. World agriculture companies did not enter there. They go for 3 years, kill the site and go to the next. You can only plough the land there. Terrible weeds climb. The cost of maintaining agriculture could only be borne by the USSR, which was interested in this and invested huge funds. Now there is no such global investor. Economically, agriculture is not profitable there. Droughts, crop failures, weeds, none of the Jews will go there voluntarily. So that's signed off Elena Karpacheva. So that's just a rebuttal, which I thought, of course, we did present it as a possibility. This is the rebuttal, but I think he still doesn't cancel the potential out of that being true. So I don't know. We might have to wait and see how that pans out as this war kicks in. Right, what have I missed on here? Serbia is allied with Russia. Yeah, and I don't blame them after what happened. I mean, the Serbs were set up so badly by NATO, it was quite ridiculous. What they actually did, if I remember correctly, the Muslims there, NATO armed them and told them if they attacked the Serbian fellows that NATO would back them up. And that's exactly what they did at night and slaughtered a lot of Serbians. This is why Serbia rallied to war. But all you got on the news, the media, was all of what these horrible Serbs are doing. Well, come on, they've just been slaughtered in the night. So a bit like what's happening in media today, you're not getting the story. But if you're sucking it up, you're going to believe the story. You're not going to be seeing the reality like you missed it in Yugoslavia. And never forget, that's all coming under Bill Clinton's thing because he wants a seat on the table. Does he not? Putin, obviously, wants a seat on the table. To get a seat on the table, you have to commit mass murder, you know. So, yeah, very interesting data. Let's have a look. That it's on the one hand, it's potential, more so today with what's happened, but that was a rebuttal. But we did find out a little bit more about Iger Birken. So I thought it was worth putting out for that alone, if nothing else. Yeah. So China done it, yeah. Well, that's quite interesting, that. Well, this is why I was saying at the back of all this, because it's the money, it's China. Now, somewhat interesting as Pakistan, Imran Khan, who to my mind is still operating for MI6, in the same way as Jeddah did, and also Jenna and his opposite, that fraud, Gandhi. How they played off the Muslims and the Indians, ultimately to slaughter big chunks of each other. Well, I think Imran Khan's been sent in there to pretty much do the same because, you know, if you go with that magic weapons that we started to discuss last week, and we will further it, but perhaps not today because I need to get a bit more savvy as to what it actually means, because a lot of it we probably don't need to study. But so I've started to put it in the website. Once that's achieved, I'll go through it and we'll present it. But when you go into that magical weapons, the reach of China is so huge. It suggests that all our leaders today, via various means, and including possibly the Epstein network, as just an arm of this Chinese shift. And we're talking about China, the corporation, of course, yeah, which is Bolshevism, the same as what we're talking about from Russia and into this Ukraine stuff. But China's arms are huge, and it would look like they're controlling this so-called East-West divide for their reasons. So that the Biden administration are kowtowing to it. Trump, the opposition, is putting up this good opposition for the duality that it creates. But ultimately, he's tied in with Putin. You know, and them two in the background here, if there's going to be a 2024, another move by Trump to get in, we could be into some serious problems, because it would have mean that the United States of America, or America, the bastion of freedom in the world, would be 100% taken over by the Bolsheviks via Russia-Trump connection. King Soros, who hates white honkies, the Scadians. So, very interesting stuff. I've also been looking at, I've had a couple of good videos sent this week on the law. One is going through what's really you have to consider if you're messing about in America with the 1099s and these things. I've listened to it once, but there were points where I stopped focusing and probably missed some good stuff. So I'm going to have to watch that a couple of times and take down the notes so we can to discuss it. But a bit like the guy last week, we finished off that video, Brent Johnston's take on the using of this 1099 system. This other one is also, there's a few, let's say, cautions for those of you who are using it. So that'll be an interesting one. There's also a video in relation to how you would move when you come off, as I have done, off person to man, so into private and on the earth. How a lot of the gurus out there should to promote the idea of a class action, when in fact a class action puts, let's say, 50 people's efforts into the hands of one lawyer, one court officer, because that's what the lawyers are, and basically obliterates those 60 or whatever class actions as individuals and puts it into one folder. To counteract that, what you'd have to do is that 30,000 people would actually do their own system, their own form, and make a claim. You can make a claim in the private for a trespass, and you can also make a corporate claim for commerce, because the corporation itself has done the trespass. So the private person, so you're hitting twice. Now, again, this is extremely important data. It's given in a bit of a up their way, so you've got to keep watching it all if I'm going to pull in the points then of note. So I'll do that as well at some point. Unfortunately, at the moment, I'm grafting, so I don't have time basically to do anything. So everything has just been stopped. Today, I wasn't sure whether we were going to do a live stream because I couldn't work out what the hell we were going to do. Went up on the coppice, had a bit of a couple of hours with nature, and come back with a bit of inspiration, and remembered that we had that rebuttal. So here we are. We do have a live stream, but I was gonna actually do one today. Fool on the cusp, jump focus, magnify. I'm not sure what you mean there, Mr. Gregory. Bosse, Prussian or Persian, I do not know, but he's working for the state. You think he's definitely? Then I would need to see a bit more of that, because that were my first impressions, that he's Catholic connected, and you would suggest that he's Prussian. But you got to remember, there still is. So you've got to be careful. But I'm pretty. I haven't. I've seen a bit of rhetoric to say he's not, but I haven't seen any guts of anything to say. Well, hang on a minute. So we don't know. I think we all think he's working for the state, yeah. But we do have to double check these things as well. Otherwise, we shoot ourselves in the foot. What do you think the internet can suck up one's soul? Well, it can. Of course it can. But it's also, the way you could look at it as well is this, okay? So let's say you've gone back a few hundred years, all of a sudden you've got available to you a printing press. Now, if you've got something about you and you've got something to say, you're encouraged to promote things, then if you bought yourself a printing press, you'd be completely absorbed in the using of that printing press to get out what it were you to do. So you'd be so interested in using that as a method of journalism, wouldn't you? And you'd be obsessed with it. Well, the internet is that for everybody. So I know what you're saying. You're not incorrect. But I think what you're saying is people that just browse, people that are just watching nonsense, then that is nonsense. But if you're actually doing something and giving something, people are picking up something from it, then there's nothing wrong with getting intensely involved in the internet world as a business, i.e., in the movement of information. So yeah, double-edged. Everything's double-edged, isn't it? If you've got a use for something, then it's serving you, isn't it? I think where they trap most people, let's be fair, is in computer games. What a waste of time. It's the most unproductive time used by anybody. It's just not productive at all. What are you gaining apart from nonsense? Nothing. Nobody else is gaining either, And if that's not just such a now and again thing, like, or a once a week thing where you get together with your mates and have a few hours bashing about, then I'd say that's an addiction to absolute nonsense that doesn't serve you in any way, shape, or form in your world, in your life, or any function at all, apart from put you well in tune for military action, because most of the lads are on this CON4 and all these killing programs. So, and it does focus all your attention to the front lobes, and you can get very angry. It does that, and so these kids can be 0 to 60 in the rear, and that's because they have their obsession with computer games. Also, I notice it on Facebook. Certain. It's not often I'm on news feed, but every now and again I'll go on it and I'll comment as much as I can if somebody's saying something, because I don't follow anybody's stuff or anything like that. I just use it there to talk bollocks and put stuff up, because I know people like to see it sometimes. But what were I going to say then? You can always tell if somebody's addicted to porn just by what they're putting up. It's and they have no idea that that's where they're at. So again, I'd say that is a destructive addiction. So definitely, but everything in this world, in the world itself, is double-edged, isn't it? Too much of anything will kill you, or damage you, and that's pretty much in everything that exists. Too much of anything, and you're in a bit of a mess. What do you think? It's a suck up harvest. Where are we? These bodies. Huh? Anyway, no, the soul or life force cannot inhibit electronics. cannot inhibit it. Let me just get that again. No, it can't be life. Absolutely not. What was I going to say on that? I think what we need to look at when we're looking at mind control, all this kind of stuff, what it is, it's the ability to control the biological system, as opposed to who you really are. That's within that biological system, so it can experience this frequency. So they can do a lot to the biological suit. That's a fact. You can change your emotion. You can block your emotion. You can, they can do all sorts of nonsense just by changing the frequency. And I've been giving thought to the odd occasion where you feel an intense force, and then you get the ringing in the ear, and it's like, what is that? Is that so? From these towers, have they shifted a frequency, and everybody gets to feel that shift of frequency, and then it's on because everything in the biological system shifts to that frequency. So I've given that some thought as that's potentially possible because it does happen a lot. You get a sort of a pressure, force field, and then a ringing in the ear when it cracks. So that's interesting. The ringing in the ear could actually be the shift of your biological system's frequency to whatever they're putting out. I mean, that's conjecture. I don't know that that's correct, but those are sorts of thoughts that have been coming through in the last few weeks when I just contemplate that kind of stuff. There is something going on, this whole planned evolution Robocop Terminator. Well, I'll tell you what I've noticed for these last few months is the chemtrailing that's going on. It has been ridiculous. And I mean ridiculous. Just all day, no stop. Oh, actually, they might stop for a couple of hours, but then they're back on evening as well. And then I'm presuming they're doing it at night. So they're doing a lot. Whether a lot of it is weather control at the moment, because, of course, gases and everything's gone up. I noted showers were costing 40p. They're now costing £1.23p. And that's gas. I was talking to a chap the other day, and he was telling me that he don't put anything on, so he sits his gas on, so he sits in front of telly with a camping stove for heat, which is not a bad idea. At least you're getting something, it's showing your sense. Why pay these ridiculous prices? I mean, if you're not going to have them remove their meters because you're not contract with them and put your own in, then you're going to have to be sensible about this thing. You know what I'm saying? Now, it's costing £1.20 for a shower. That's fucking ludicrous, to be quite frank. And these people need beating around the head severely in a loony bin or something like that, in a legal kind of sense, not just going out there to do it. But you know what I'm saying? These people are demented that are doing this stuff and loving it. The Native Indians in America. The Native Indians in America is because of spider bite, the rotting of the flesh, the poison, some amused your emotions of some set thought pattern of your stories in your. I don't even. It's not communicating very well, that, Michael. So the Native Indians in America. What is because? So I'm saying the Native in America say it is what is. I'm suggesting I'm adding some words for you there, but I'm not sure what you're saying. Well, when you get down, negative, despair, you pump in toxins into your body consistently and you can't get rid of it. And that adds to it. This is where your biological system shifts so negative that it's in spiritual terms, it's called despair. And you're not to get yourself to that. People are putting on a lot of weight because there's so many toxins in the system from the food they're eating and the mind, the thought patterns. The fat, big fat people. It's like there's a reason for all this stuff. Nothing like that just happens. There's always a reason. So I'm not sure I make sense of that. Mood modification and control is a game. Well, they're definitely up to something serious, and I think a lot of it is weather control. But the amount that they're spraying, and there's metals coming down from that. I think it takes 40 minutes for it to reach the floor, and then they're pumping up this new. Oh look, it might happen again. All this talking head chat that's going on. It's the perfect delivery system, isn't it? So much love. We all came in at the moment of whatever the plotline story is that we are to fulfill or came to be ourselves. Well, that's true. We're all here for a reason. But if you can't find what that reason is, you're just going to be part of the hapless dead. And you're going to be governed at primary school level because you need to be told, you need to ask, you need for permission, you're looking for punishment. Well, that's primary school children, isn't it? And that's what you're getting. They get the government you deserve. Look at what you. It's where you're at because nobody does anything. They all look at what's happening. And that's it. There's no thought processes beyond that. The victim, no empowerment. What am I reading? It is. I'll put it up after. Let me just find it. What have I? Oh, I get it now. So it's a Russian or Paul. I don't know exactly where it's from, but it's definitely a translate, and he calls himself the Commissioner of Qatar. What's at the bottom? So I can't understand the language of it. So I will put the link up at the bottom so that you've got it. But of course, like I said, it was written in 2019. A lot's happened since 2019. Yeah, you've had the last 2 years of the madness. You've had the madness since February with Vlad and the talking heads here who have destroyed not Russia, but have destroyed the West itself with sanctions causing havoc because, of course, it's all part of the Great Reset. Every single bit of it. Which is why Boris Johnson can go over there and pretend to be important talking to an actor, Zelensky. They're all big buddies in there. They're not buddies, they're puppets, and they're friends because they're all in the same boat, being told what to do because they're babies, infants. They're actually infants at that level. Intelligent infants. Or they're good at copying what they're told to say. So that's what that is. I will put the link up though, so you can get it. Nice coach. It's actually very comfortable. Even also late to get Andrew, that's double detention for you. You're always late. You're in a naughty way. It's going to be classified as a what's they call it there? These teachers. What do they call it? An unauthorized failure to attend. Something like that. So you're very naughty. Greetings. The Great Reset, the final solution. Oi, oi. Spent a year on doom waste of life. It is a waste of time. It's pointless. I have to know what's going on and keep me out of it. I don't let it affect me emotionally. There's a cut-off point. I'm just reading it and laughing because I know it's real. But I also know that there's that many people that are going to just suffer this because they don't know other options, because they have to be told, and they only trust TV and the talking heads, that you're not going to change their minds, I'm hearing people bunkering down, oh, I'm not going out of the mask anymore because I got pool in. It's like, come on, you're back into, they're not going out of their house again because what? Telly said, oh, look what's happening. What else is there? It's just people are in it. They're in that fear, and there's no pulling them out of it. So why try? Why try and why get emotionally involved? Don't do it. Don't do it. Concern yourself with where you're going, what you're doing, and your nearest and dearest. If they're not tapped, if your nearest and dearest are tapped, leave them to it because they're only going to be tapped. You don't need to be dragged into that tapped as well. I'm going to use the net to do mukbang vids. What's a mukbang vid? Is that something disgusting? You need to expand on that, Mr. Gill. Mukbang vids. When the high-pitched ringing affects me, I focus on generating a constant frequency to stop it, and it works. Well, I mean, a lot of people are experiencing it, and it's funny because I've been talking about it, because I want to know that other people are having this thing, and it's not just me, because I wanted to know, am I being targeted, or is this just what we're all experiencing? And I'll mention it to some people, and they'll go, oh, I don't know what you're on about. And I'll mention it a bit more, and they'll go, actually, I do know what you're talking about. So stop telling fucking lies to yourselves, you big puffs. If you're going to lie to yourself, how can you possibly be truthful with anybody else? So there's a process for getting your meters out. You first don't want to contract with them. So it's always easier if you move into a new. You haven't to purchase any on the cars. You get whoever's been in, give them money, and they'll purchase it. So you're not contracting. Because remember, these effects, this game isn't just being judged in the physical. There's a spiritual force judging everything on this. And if you were blatantly lying your ass off, they know. So there's a process. You would go in, you would have to write to them. I mean, you can ring them first and record it and make sure at the point you're going to do, you've got it recited well, so you can do it quick, tell them to record it. And you give them notice that you are not contracting. You give them 7 days to come and remove the meters. If they don't, you'll remove them yourself and then give them a further 7 days to collect the meters. If they don't collect the meters after 7 days, you will dispose of the meters yourself. All right? So that's what you would do. And as long as you've got that paperwork, you've got the evidence that you sent it, etc., you are then within your rights to remove those meters because you've given them notice and then put your own in. It's a prepaid system, remember? So then you have to get savvy with how you would deal with the nonsense that may come in that time. But you're going to have to, these are the things you have to do, you see. If you're going to do battle, you have to prepare to do battle. You can't just expect to, and it goes away. These bastards will fight you because the last thing they want is the reality of the West as a system to be remembered because it will destroy the little shenanigans as you all shift over into the no-hide. So what is mukbang videos? How do you get the meters out? No, we've done that. I've used to have installed it. These are smart meters in this property. You've never seen it like it. It's a fucking joke. But I haven't. It's not my property, this. So you know, I have to be able to. Everything in its place and its time. It also has to be remembered that, you can't expect to win everything because if you make one mistake, it's a loss. You've got to take that on board. Make sure you don't make a mistake again. Don't shit yourself, panic and fear. Just get back on the game. Recognize your failure and don't do it again. No, you can. Right, this is the law on gas and all this stuff. You can do what the fuck you want in your own property. You cannot ply your trade doing gas for anybody else without being certified. In your own property, you can do what you want. I'm in England, mate. England! And that's it. You've got to get your paperwork together. But you've also got to understand the system. which is what we've all been looking at all these last couple of years with these videos that I've been doing and other people doing it. It's to start to show you that, things aren't as they seem. And the first point of call is recognizing that you have to start to recognize that everything that you thought was real is false and it's based on person. So that you have to get to grips with. You've got to understand how that works in order to understand how you then counteract that assumption. Yeah. Problems still with the your motors in that. So I've had to concede a defeat because the simple fact is, as it stands, the title they're holding is the assignment of the registration plate to the VIN number. So that's their ultimate title. You then agree to that when you give them your surname for the V5, which is how I played it and got it off. They'd left me alone for nearly a couple of years. However, the new game now, because they've got all these young dumbass immigrants in who are happy to clamp all day, they've got the cameras in now, so anybody exiting and entering any town, it'll come up as that car, that motor is blah blah blah. Off they send. You're watching the cameras. Off they send these little immigrants in to clamp you. They're just going to keep clamping you every fucking day until eventually you get pissed off and annihilate one of these little immigrant guys for touching your property. In come the bunch of pricks. So I reckoned with that and thought, I'm not playing that game of them coming here every fucking time and just clamping this damn thing because it's just going to get silly and I'm going to end up getting myself in serious trouble because it pissed me off. So that's a tactical retreat. It is not a defeat. It's a defeat in one aspect. But this is how you learn. So what I'd go in... Now, however, what I should have done is continue to use the entry birth title. But that's not what I did at that stage. But I haven't... You never give up. You just come back to fight another way and a better way. What country? Yeah. I'm late because I'm bus building a new chicken coop. Garden shed and erecting a new greenhouse. I have a note from my mum. That's fine then. It's always good. It's authorised. However, if you were at a real school, it wouldn't be authorised because mum's notes don't authorise it anymore. They have to authorise it and say, yes, you can, or no, you can't. Because, of course, they get paid for bums on seats. Do they not? Yes, they do. And if you're off, they don't get paid for that off. They don't tell you that. They say it's for your child's benefit, of course, for education. Mukbang is where people watch you cook a meal, then eat it. No words are ever spoken. Well, I'm not sure about whether I eat one or what you want to watch it and scoff it, because I scoff it quick. It's not pleasant. But I have said that I will record me making a stir fry because it's important, because a lot of us out there don't really understand. I can't stand cooking. I haven't done any cooking now for yonks because it does my head in. It's such a waste of time. Stood there doing this and doing that and fanning around. I think to myself sometimes, I might be called Brenda. In big time I've finished. And I remember, no, you're not. You're just doing Brenda's job, cooking. You know what I'm saying? No, the girls are going to probably have a fit at that. But at the end of the day, that's just I'm being real. Cooking and me doesn't feel good. It's shit. So I look at these chefs all the time. I think you fairies. You've got all that because it's easy. That's what you've done it for. Anyway, that's just abusing the chefs there a bit, but never mind. You know what I don't mean. Really, because if I'm coming to your restaurant, I want to feed off your lovely words, and some of you are very good. So that's mukbang, is it? Okay. The note saves your butt. Well, yeah, look, the pit. So I've said this as well. You've many options in this, but you have. This is the problem, you see. It doesn't go in for most people because your mind's got it in it, swimming around, but you haven't applied yourself to ensure that your subconscious gets it. So, you know, you by right, the certificate itself is proof that you're a beneficiary. But you don't want to be acting out in that capacity. You want to be acting in relation to the trust settler. So you can offer to appoint whoever's at you as trustee in the trust action. Bearing in mind they can't on the beneficiary, and the trust it can't lose anything. It's got to benefit. So if you've come in as man with an interest in as settler beneficiary, yeah, you've got to benefit through the trust. That's one way. The other way is getting into grips with these. We only get 1099 so because it's the US that are doing this, but you can do the same thing here. So I think I need to look into that and come to understand it, which I do. I've got a good grasp on how you actually play this game. I haven't put it into practice yet because I'm just too busy. You know what I'm saying? It's like when I'm not grafting, I've got all the time in the world to do all sorts, and I get things done. But when I'm grafting, nothing gets done because by the time I've got sat down after a day's work, it's 9 o'clock. And I'm just shattered. To start bloody reading words and formulating processes, it just wouldn't happen because I'm pretty tired, you know what I'm saying? And then I go to bed early, which is unusual. I don't usually get to bed early, but I've been starting to go to bed a bit earlier and it's working. I have an easier day. They eat the fucking animals. They are usually way overweight. Well, I have to say, my friend, I eat meat. That was an interesting concept I saw the other day that someone suggested that if you eat meat, you're opening yourself up to be eaten. So parasites. So that fair dues. I'm not really asked, you know what I'm saying? I don't plan on being here forever, to be frank. You have a question for everyone. Are you living life or is life living you? Are you killing time or is time killing you? Well, yeah. Well, interesting, but this year may turn out to be rather interesting. So I've got some things going on the back burner that could be rather interesting and very enjoyable as well. So there's a lot of things cooking in the kitchen over here in Life of the Mixed World. So, and I think you would probably enjoy it. So I think I've not been living life for quite a long time because I chose to do this. But now I'm at the point where I'm thinking, I don't have that angst to do this, to do that. However, I'm always open. You know, if I get some inspiration and I'll put it together. I've got many formats now in which I can present that to the wider world without me having to get overexcited about things, which is now giving me time to and realizing that I can actually do something a bit better, a bit more enjoyable. So I'm starting to know less of the time killing me. I'm going to start dictating time in relation to what I plan to do in the future. So no problem. I hope that does answer it and you're welcome. So I'll say no more, but just keep your eyes and ears out on this kind of stuff. So what are we, 123? Oh, well, I've got plenty of time. Anybody got any other questions or subjects we might have a look at? So interesting stuff. I'm going to make a cigarette if you don't mind. I do apologise if you don't mind watching figures. But yeah, what else? We'll do some herbs as well before we end, because it's fascinating, isn't it? Just reading through the thing, you're thinking in different terms in relation to how you'd apply yourself to starting to use herbs for your health, basically. You're preparing for the future life, keeping chickens. Yeah, exactly. And you're doing absolutely right. You're doing the right things. Eggs are amazing on their own. You won't even have to eat your chickens. The eggs themselves are so full of everything you need. You know, it's good, but it's you can see that they're doing it. They are moving. They're moving this game to starvation. And this is what the Bolsheviks do, and they love it. They love it. You know, they're picking off farming now. In America, they're talking about licensing farms to keep cattle. Well, it serves you right. Why would you want to be licensed if you're on your own land? Why use government services? Because that's where you get taxed. That's where you get subject to regulations. It's because you're using a government service. You know, why do that? Get off that. It's got to be the way for farmers to start to look at. Stop using the government services, and you're no longer under the regulations. It's that money in it, that fiat. People really need to start getting gold and silver, and then people can deal amongst themselves outside of this system that's just going to go up its own ass. You can tell if an egg is organic or not by the colours. Oh yeah, the darker the yellow, the more organic. And you get these from supermarkets. They're absolutely disgusting. Unless you get Lidl's. Lidl's are okay. Always try for local. We have a stall at market, and she just sells all local stuff. So that, you know. But farmers, you know, but better still is just have your own chickens. Blood orange is organic, yeah. Yeah, you're right. They're not yellow, they're orange. These, it's ridiculous. You're quite right there. I'm working next week, yes. Oh, Andrew, yeah. Oh, shit, I was supposed to contact you. You sent me an interesting bit of data there, thank you. I haven't looked at the Committee of 300 stuff yet, but I think you sent me a video that I have watched. Yeah, when you get it, get yourself. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm grafting in. Next week, I'm grafting in Aki and Burnley. So in Aki, it's at Thames Centre, so you'd only have to actually park up at Thames Centre. I can guide you to it. That'd be easy. Or I'm in Burnley as well for a couple of days. Yeah, that's true. That they are working on something where they can determine what you're allowed to buy and what you're not allowed to buy. So then Barger comes back in, doesn't it? You got to remember, a lot of what they're putting up is what they want to do. It's their intent, and they will do it if people don't rebut it. But I like what we saw on that video in relation to sending in your own stuff en masse. Loads of you doing it. They're in trouble. Yeah, homegrown is always better. Of course it is. You know what's on it. And I have a friend who she grows her own, and when it's coming through, she'll always give me some. It's just unbelievable. It makes you wonder what those things are that you're eating from the supermarkets, because they're just not right, a lot of it. So one other thing, I don't do McDonald's as a rule. I used to do many years ago when I was working away, and my old favourite was the Big Tasty. And you were very aware you were eating beef because it stank of beef, yeah? If you smelt it too much, it could put you off, but the tastes that blended together were amazing. Now, last weekend, a friend of mine said, "Oh, we're having a Big Tasty tonight," and I just thought, "Oh, is that back on?" And I just thought, well, bugger it. I don't eat it enough, so it's not going to do any harm. I'll go and have one. So I got one. It didn't smell like any kind of meat at all, and the texture wasn't like meat, and it didn't taste of anything. So being a few years since I had a Big Tasty, what the hell have they done in McDonald's? Because they're certainly not feeding you beef. Yeah, so in my head ends, I'd have a set amount and I would offer them to my neighbours. So we could try and encourage an exchange going on. You know, everybody's got something to exchange. I'm not going to like a no. Once I get myself established probably somewhere permanent instead of all this piss ass in around, then that's when I'll set to get all that together. But at the moment, it's just pointless. But they grow very quickly and they smoke. So, keep in mind, if you can't afford tobacco down the line, it doesn't matter. They grow like Billy O and they taste like those Tom Thumb cigars. I used to smoke those small cigars for quite a few years. You soon get used to the taste of them, believe me. So it would not be a huge upheaval to stop buying tobacco and smoking those. It would just take a creative action on your part. So I haven't, but definitely. Right, okay, Andy. Well, I'm definitely there on Tuesday. So if Tuesday's good for you, that's probably a good one. And probably Wednesday, and I'm going to be in Burnley, I think, towards the latter end of the week, which has just reminded me I need to tell my client that. All right, that'd be great. Yeah. So Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm in Aki Town Centre, refurbing a shop. Oh, that'd be great as well. Yeah, sure. Brilliant. I'll definitely try that, and we'll talk all about it next week. Right. So let's have a look at some herbs. So this one is called Asarabacca, and it's Asarabacca. Now, what I'm going to do, and I've said this before, I'm going to. So I have to rewrite these things because they're just hard to read. So I'm gathering a few together, I'm discussing them on here, and then I'm going to put a report on the website with all these that I've actually translated, so it's easy access. So as it starts to make more sense of us, I'll put it up that way. Because I put books up all the time, but very few people can read them or will read them. So if we put it up in this in a sort of a way that we can sort of understand it a bit better, it might help. Because we do, what the future they're trying to push together, this stuff is going to become so important for everybody that's going to become your own doctor. So it says, description. Asarabacca have many heads rising from the roots, from whence come many smooth leaves, every one upon his own footstalk, which are rounder and bigger than violet leaves, thicker also, and of a dark green shining colour on the upper side, and of a pale yellow or green underneath, little or nothing dented about the edges, from among which rife, small, round, hollow brown-green husks upon short stalks about an inch long, divided at the brims into 5 divisions, very like the cups or heads of the henbane seed, but that they are smaller, and these are the flowers it carrieth, which are somewhat sweet, being smelled unto, and wherein, when they are ripe, it contains small, cornered, rough seeds, very like the kernels or stones of grapes or raisins. The roots are small and whitish, spread in diverse ways in the ground, and increase into divers heads, but not running or creeping under the ground, as some other creeping herbs do. They are somewhat sweet in smell, resembling nardus, but more when they are dry than green, and of a sharp but not unpleasant taste. Place, it groweth frequently in gardens. Time, they keep their leaves green all the winter, but shoot forth new in the spring. And with them come forth those heads or flowers which give ripe seed about midsummer or somewhat after. Government and virtues. It is a plant under the dominion of Mars, so it's another Mars plant, and therefore inimical to nature. This herb, being drunk, not only provoketh vomiting, but purgeth downward and by urine also. So it's a purger of toxin, purging both choler and phlegm. If you add it to some spikenard with the weight of goat's milk or honeyed water, it is made more strong, but it purgeth phlegm more in manifestly than choler, and therefore do much help pains in the hips and other parts, Being boiled in whey, it wonderfully helpeth the obstruction of the liver and spleen. So again, a great one for liver obstructions. So if you're taking meds, you're doing a lot of processed food, these herbs that we've covered so far are amazing at clearing out the liver and spleen. And of course, a lot of them were also clearing out kidney stones, problems of the bladder, etc. So it says liver and spleen, and is therefore profitable for the dropsy and jaundice. Being steeped in wine and drunk, it helps those continual augurs that come by the plenty of stubborn humours, and oil made thereof by setting it in the sun. Sorry. So you have to set it in the sun to dry it, with some laudanum added to it. Laudanum? What's that? Is that not poppy? Provoketh the sweating, the ridge of the back being anointed therewith, and thereby driveth away the shaking fits of the auger. So this stuff's amazing for expelling all something nasty. It will not abide any long boiling, for it loseth its chief strength thereby, nor much beating, for the finer powder that provoke vomits and urine, and the coarser purgeth downwards. The common doth provoke the common use hereof is to take the juice of 5 or 7 leaves in a little drink to cause vomitings. The roots have also the same virtue, though they are not they do not operate so forcibly. Yet they are very effectual against the biting of serpents, and therefore are put as an ingredient both in the mithridate and Venice treacle. Mithridate, I don't know what that is. The leaves and roots being boiled in lye, and the head often washed therewith while it is warm, comforteth the head and brain that is ill affected by taking cold, and helpeth the memory. I shall desire ignorant people to forbear the use of the leaves. The roots purge more gently, and may prove beneficial in such as have cancers, or old petrified ulcers, or fistulas upon the bodies. To take a drachma of them in powder in a quarter of a pint of wine in the morning. The truth is, I fancy purging and vomiting medicines as little as any man breathing, for they weaken nature, or shall ever advise them to be used unless upon urgent necessity. So he's basically saying he doesn't suggest the leaves because they just force the vomit, and then if you've done it another way, the sweat. But if you use the roots, it's a gentler process. If a physician be nature's servant, it is his duty to strengthen his mistress as much as he can and weaken her as little as may be. As much as he can and weaken her as little as he may be. Right, so he's basically saying it's always be gentle in the use of these herbs. So that's Asarabaka. The next one is alkanet, and it says, besides the common name, it is called orkanet, and Spanish buglofs, and by apothecaries, it's called anthusa. Oh, yeah, I've come across anthusa a lot. Description of the many forks of this herb, there is one that grows commonly in this nation, so he's always speaking of England, of which one is one take this description. It hath a great and thick root of reddish colour, long, narrow, and hairy leaves, green like the leaves of bugloss, which lie very thick upon the ground. I don't know what bugloss is. And the stalks rile up compassed, about thick with leaves. I think it's composed that actually. Which are less and narrower than the former. They are tender and slender. The flowers are hollow, small, and of reddish purple colour. The seed is greyeth. Place. It grows in Kent near Rochester and in many places in the West Country. West. Both in Devonshire and Cornwall. Time. They flower in July and the beginning of August, and the seed is ripe soon after. But the root is in its prime, as carrots and parsnips are, before the herb runs up to stalk. So there's always a difference between the leaf and the root. So that's important to know when looking into this stuff. Government and virtues. It is a herb under the dominion of Venus, and indeed one of her darlings, though sometimes something hard to come by. It helps old ulcers, hot inflammations, burnings by common fire, and St. Anthony's fire by antipathy to Mars. For these uses, your best way is to make it into an ointment. Also, if you make a vinegar of it, as you make vinegar of roses, it helps the morphew and leprosy. I don't know what morphew is. If you apply the herb to the privates, it draws forth the dead child. Oh. It helps the yellow jaundice, spleen, and gravel in the kidneys. Discorides saith it helps such as are bitten by venomous beasts, whether it be taken inwardly or applied to the wound. Nay, he saith, further, if anyone whom hath been newly bit, he saith further, if anyone who hath newly eaten it, but do not spit it in the mouth of the serpent instantly dies. So if you spit it, all right. So if you spit it at a serpent, it'll die. It stays the flux of the belly, kills worms, helps the fits of the mother. Its decoction made in wine and drunk strengthens the back and easeth the pains thereof. It helps bruises and falls, and is a good remedy to drive out the smallpox and measles. An ointment made of it is excellent for green wounds, pricks, or thrusts. So it deals out smallpox and measles. That's interesting. As a drink. The adder's tongue. Or serpent's tongue. Description. This small herb has but one leaf, which grows with a stalk a finger's length above the ground, being fat and of fresh green colour, broad like the water plantain, but less, without any middle rib in it. From the bottom of the leaf, upon the inside, riseth up ordinary, one, sometimes two or three, small slender stalks, the upper half whereof is somewhat bigger, and dented with small round dents of a yellowish green colour, like the tongue of an adder or a serpent. Only this is as useful as they are formidable. The root continues all the year. Place. It groweth in moist meadows and such like places. Time. It is to be found in April and May, for it quickly perisheth with a little heat. Government and virtues. It is a herb under the dominion of the moon in Cancer, and therefore, if the weakness of the retentive faculty be caused by an evil influence of Saturn in any part of the body governed by the moon or under the dominion of Cancer, this herb cures it by sympathy. It cures those diseases after specified in any other part of the body under the influence of Saturn by antipathy. It is temperate in respect of heat, but dry in the second degree. The juice of the leaves drunk with distilled water of horsetail is a singular remedy for all manner of wounds in the beasts, the bowels, or other parts of the body, and is given with good success unto those who are troubled with casting or cafting. It's going to be casting that. It's put an F in. Now, I don't know what casting is. Vomiting or bleeding of the mouth or nose or otherwise downward. The said juice given in the distilled water of orchid buds is very good for women. Oh, so you can distill juices of these plants. That's interesting. The said juice given in the distilled water of orchid buds is the distilled water of orchid buds is very good for women who have their usual courses or their whites flowing down too abundantly. It helps the sore eyes. Four eyes. The leaves infused or boiled in oil, onfashine, or unripe olives. So the leaves infused in boiled in oil, onfashine, or unripe olives sets in the sun. So you're drying this for certain days, or the green leaves sufficiently boiled in the said oil makes an excellent green balsam, not only for green and fresh wounds, but also for old and invertebrate ulcers, especially if the little fine clear turpentine be dissolved wherein. Now, the turpentine he's probably talking about would be the pine turpentine, which I am about to start using for my yearly destruction of parasites and any candida. So I'm about to start using that again. I don't do it all the time, but then I have sessions and I'm about to do it. I have shown it you before, but I'll show you again. I use that, and I use 1.5 teaspoons on 3 sugar lumps, but I don't use the sugar lumps anymore. They're more difficult to get down, so I just put 3 teaspoons of sugar and 1.5 teaspoons of that on it. Now the sugar encourages the parasites to come out of their because the parasites, when they get in you, they create a sort of sticky bile around themselves, and that protects them from the immune system. So this turpentine, the sugar encourages the parasites out, and the turpentine annihilates them. So that's how you use this turpentine, and it's great stuff. I have noted that sometimes it can actually have, well, it's not quite an hallucinogenic thing, but it definitely, when it gets through the brain barrier, it does have an effect on the function of the brain for a bit. But you don't have to be worried about it. It's just, it doesn't always do it though, I have to say, but it does do it sometimes. So where are we there? So he said turpentine be dissolved therein. It also stayeth and represseth all inflammations that arise upon pains by hurts or wounds, either taken inwardly or outwardly applied. For ruptures or burdened bellies, take as much of the powder of the dried leaves as will lie on a sixpence, or less according to the age of the party, in 2 ounces of horsetail or oak bud water, sweetened with syrup of quinces. Use it every morning for the space of 15 days. But before you enter upon the use of this or any other medicine, the gut, if it fall into the scrotum, must be reduced by a surgeon. What? Use it every morning for the space of 15 days, but before you enter upon the use of this or any other medication, the gut, if it fall into the scrotum, must be reduced by the surgeon, and the truss must be worn to keep it up, and a party must avoid all violent motions, and lie as much as may be in bed or on the couch. Fabricus Hildanus says that some have been cured of great ruptures by lying in bed when they could be cured no other way. Well, what say to that? That's the 3 I've got ready for today. So that endeth the herb investigation for this live stream. So I'm just going to put it in order so that I don't use it next week. There we go. That's that done. So excellent. So that's the herbs done. And that pretty much covers everything I had to speak about this week. So where are you guys at? Yeah, okay, Andy, that's good. So you've got it. Good. Excellent. And we'll be putting it up on site as a PDF as well. So, but I suppose if you bought it, all the more. It is difficult to read, but you soon get into it. So that's why I'm translating it. So when I put it up, I'll have all these translations up as well. And I'll try and put them together so that they're under Mars, they're under the Venus, etc. I'll do it in that way. I'll also try and work it so that at a glance you can see what they're good for, you know, so I'll have to code it, put a key in perhaps. Because I think as we do this, if I put the effort in now, it'll be quite easy to put up as a report and a much easier format in which, if you're serious about this, you can actually start making sense out of it. A turpentine enema. Do you know, it's amazing stuff. If I get a sore gum, I'll just rub some on it. It kills everything. It's amazing. It's good stuff. But it's you know, you've got to test yourself on it first if you're going to use it, and don't definitely maybe put half a teaspoon of it on some sugar. But the sugar is important because, like I said, it pulls the parasites out of this sticky stuff that they surround themselves in, and then they get zapped. And then, of course, you have to be, when you're using this, you want to be going to the toilet every time you feel that urge, because as important with this is that you get it out, this shit that you're killing. You don't want it floating around inside your bod. Don't buy Chinese garlic. Oh. Well, garlic's excellent for a lot of things, isn't it? Let's be frank. Although I'm struggling to get good garlic these days. So much of it's shit. You've got to be really careful what you're buying. So hopefully one day I'll be growing all my own stuff. I'll be keeping all my own animals, and they can do what the hell they want with this system. I won't be using it. And there's more and more people thinking those terms. Then obviously we're going to be creating our own currencies, you know, the product itself, but then exchange for others. So just another thing I'll put out there. I don't know whether I said it last week, but there's a difference between income and exchange. I think I did say it, but I'll just reiterate it because, again, it's important for people to get in your minds that income's taxable, exchange of your labour for money isn't. So keep that in mind as well if you're refuting any claims by any taxman. If you're not selling goods, it's an exchange. And also, you don't need to put any, you don't want to put a claim in that you've earned taxable anything, which tax returners do. You're actually making the claim that you've done it. If they make the claim, then they've made the claim. They have to then prove that claim. And of course, you're coming in as beneficiary settler. They're paying. They're bringing the trust action. You haven't made the claim unless you put the tax return in. Yeah. So get that into your mind as well in relation to how you can start to apply this stuff to your own personal life. Well, that's nearly another 2 hours. So I'm going to say with that, chaps, till the next time, and I'll let you go out on this groovy tune that I've put together, which we'll be using for our intro and extra. And so I'll say, not quite till the next time, but if I can get this to work, till the next time.